Chapter 6 Is the weather good for fishing? Our vocabulary words are tentatively, which means uncertain, distorted, which means twisted out of shape, and exasperation, which is extremely annoyed. So, Chapter 6. We must think what to do, Papa said. They are suspicious now. To be honest, I thought that if they came here at all, and I hoped they wouldn't, that they would just glance around, see that we had no place to hide anyone, and would go away. "I'm sorry I have dark hair," Ellen murmured. It made them suspicious. Mamma reached over quickly and took Ellen's hand. "You have beautiful hair, Ellen, just like your mamma's," she said. "Don't ever be sorry for that. Weren't we lucky that Papa thought so quickly and found the pictures? And weren't we lucky that Lise had dark hair when she was a baby? It turned blonde later on, when she was 2 or so. In between," Papa added, "she was bald for a while." Ellen and Anne-Marie both smiled tentatively for a moment. Their fears were eased. Tonight was the first time Anne-Marie realized suddenly that Mamma and Papa had spoken of Lise. The first time in 3 years. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten. Mrs. Johansson went to the kitchen and began to make tea. "I've never been up so early before," Anne-Marie said. "Ellen and I will probably fall asleep in school today." Papa rubbed his chin for a moment, thinking. "I think we must not take the risk of sending you to school today," he said. "It is possible that they will look for Jewish children in the schools." "Not go to school?" Ellen asked in amazement. "My parents have always told me that education is the most important thing. Whatever happens, I must get an education." "This will only be a vacation, Ellen. For now, your safety is the most important thing. I'm sure your parents would agree." "Ing?" Papa called Mamma in from the kitchen, and she came to the doorway with a teacup in her hand and a questioning look on her face. "Yes?" "We must take the girls to Hendrick's. You remember what Peter told us. I think today is the day to go to your brother's." Mrs. Johansson nodded. "I think you're right. But I will take them. You must stay here." "Stay here and let you go alone? Of course not. I wouldn't send you on a dangerous trip alone." Mamma put a hand on Papa's shoulder. "If only I go with the girls, it will be safer. They are unlikely to suspect a woman and her children. If they are watching us, if they see all of us leave, if they are aware that the apartment is empty, that you didn't go to your office this morning, then they will know. Then it will be dangerous. I'm not afraid to go alone." It was very seldom that Mamma disagreed with Papa. Anne-Marie watched his face and knew that he was struggling with the decision. Finally, he nodded, reluctantly. "I will pack some things," Mamma said. "What time is it?" Papa looked at his watch. "Almost 5, he said. "Henrik will still be there. He leaves around 5. Why don't you call him?" Papa went to the phone. Ellen looked puzzled. "Who is Henrik? Where does he go at 5 in the morning?" she asked. Anne-Marie laughed. "He's my uncle, my mother's brother, and he's a fisherman. They leave very early. All the fishermen. Each morning. Their boats go out at sunrise." "Oh, Ellen," she went on, "you will love it there. It's where my grandparents lived, where Mamma and Uncle Henrik grew up. It's so beautiful, right on the water. You can stand at the edge of the meadow and look across to Sweden." She listened while Papa spoke on the phone to Uncle Henrik, telling him that Mamma and the children were coming for a visit. Ellen had gone into the bathroom and closed the door. Mamma was still in the kitchen, so only Anne-Marie was listening. It was a very puzzling conversation. "So, Henrik, is the weather good for fishing?" Papa asked cheerfully and listened briefly. Then he continued, "I'm sending Ing and to you today with the children, and she will be bringing a carton of cigarettes." "Yes, just one," said Papa after a moment. Anne-Marie couldn't hear Uncle Henrik's words. "But there are a lot of cigarettes available in Copenhagen now, if you know what to look for. And so there will be others coming to you as well, I'm sure." But it wasn't true. Anne-Marie was quite certain it wasn't true. Cigarettes were the thing that Papa missed, the way Mama missed coffee. He complained often, he had complained only yesterday, that there were no cigarettes in the stores. The men in his office, he said, making a face, smoked almost anything, sometimes dried weeds rolled in paper, and the smell was terrible. Why was Papa speaking that way, almost as if he were speaking in code? And what was Mama really taking to Uncle Hendrik? Okay, so I'm going to stop right here for just a second. And Anne-Marie just realized that Papa and Uncle Hendrik were talking in code on the phone. What do you think they are talking about? Then she knew. It was Ellen. The train ride north along the Danish coast was very beautiful. Again and again they could see the sea from the windows. Anne-Marie had made this trip often to visit her grandparents when they were alive, and later, after they were gone, to see the cheerful, sun-tanned, unmarried uncle whom she loved. But the trip was new to Ellen, who sat with her face pressed to the window, watching the lovely homes along the seaside, the small farms and villages. "Look," Anne-Marie exclaimed, and pointed to the opposite side. "It's Klampenborg, and the deer park." There's a picture. "Oh, I wish we could stop here, just for a little while." Mama shook her head. "Not today," she said. The train did not stop at the small Klampenborg station, but none of the few passengers got off. "Have you ever been there, Ellen?" Mama asked, but Ellen said no. "Well, some day you will go. Some day you will walk through the park and you will see hundreds of deer, tame and free." Kirsty wiggled to her knees and peered through the window. "I don't see any deer," she complained. "They are there, I'm sure," Mama told her. "They're hiding in the trees." The train started again. The door at the end of the car opened and 2 German soldiers appeared. Anne-Marie tensed. Not here. On the train, too? They were everywhere. Together the soldiers strolled through the car, glancing at passengers, stopping here and there to ask a question. One of them had something stuck in his teeth. He prodded his tongue and distorted his face. Anne-Marie watched with a kind of frightened fascination as the pair approached. One of the soldiers looked down at the bored expression on his face. "Where are you going?" "Galilee," Mama replied calmly. "My brother lives there. We are going to visit him." The soldier turned away, and Anne-Marie relaxed. Then, without warning, he turned back. "Are you visiting your brother for the New Year?" he asked. Mama stared at him with a puzzled look. "New Year?" she asked. "It's only October." "And guess what?" Christy exclaimed suddenly in a loud voice, looking at the soldier. Anne-Marie's heart sank and looked at her mother. Mama's eyes were frightened. "Shh, Christy, don't chatter so much." But Kirsty paid no attention to Mama, as usual. She looked cheerfully at the soldier, and Anne-Marie knew what she was about to say. "This is our friend Ellen, and it's her New Year." But she didn't. Instead, Kirsty pointed at her feet. "I'm going to visit my Uncle Hendrik," she chirped, "and I'm wearing my brand new shiny black shoes." The soldier chuckled and moved on. Anne-Marie glanced through the window again. The trees, the Baltic Sea, the cloudy October sky passed in a blur as they continued north to the coast. Smell the air, Mamma said when they stopped off the train and made their way on the narrow street. Isn't it lovely and fresh? It always brings back memories for me. The air was breezy and cool, and carried the sharp, now not unpleasant smell of salt and fish. High against the pale clouds, seagulls soared and cried out as if they were mourning. Mamma looked at her watch. I wonder if Hendrik will be back yet. But it doesn't matter. The house is always unlocked. Come on, girls, we'll walk. It isn't far, just a little under 2 miles. And it's a nice day. We'll take the path through the woods instead of the road. It's a little longer, but it's pretty. Didn't you love the castle when you went through? Kirsty asked. She had been talking about the Kronborg castle ever since they had seen it, sprawling, massive, and ancient beside the sea from the train. I wish we could have stopped to visit the castle. Kings live there, and queens. Anne-Marie sighed in exasperation with her little sister. They do not, she said. They did in the old days, but there aren't any kings now. Denmark only has 1 king anyway, and he lives in Copenhagen. But Kirsty had pranced away, skipping along the sidewalk. Kings and queens, she sang happily. Kings and queens. Mamma shrugged and smiled. Let her dream, Anne-Marie. I did the same when I was her age. She turned, leading the way along the teeny, twisting street, heading toward the outskirts of the village. Things have hardly changed here since I was a girl, she said. My Aunt Giddy lived there, in that house, she pointed. She's been dead for years, but the house is the same. She always had wonderful flowers in the garden. She peered over the low stone wall and looked at the few flowering bushes as they passed the house. Maybe they still do, but it's the wrong time of year. There are just those few chrysanthemums left. And see, over there, she pointed again. My best friend, her name was Helena, lived in that house. Sometimes I used to spend the night with her, but more often she came to my house, on weekends. It was more fun to be in the country. My brother Hendrik always teased us, though, she continued with a chuckle. He told us ghost stories and scared us half to death. The sidewalk ended, and Mamma turned into the dirt path, bordered by trees. When I walked each morning into town for school, she said, my dog followed me this far. At the end of the path, he turned and went back home. I guess he was a country dog, and didn't like town. And do you know what? She went on smiling. I had named him Tophas. Faithful. And it was just the right name for him, because what a faithful dog he was. Every afternoon he was right here waiting for me to return. He knew the right time somehow. Sometimes, as I came around this bend, even today, I feel as if I might come upon Tophas, waiting still, with his tail wagging. But the path was empty today. No people, no faithful dogs. Mamma shifted the bag she was carrying from one hand to the other, and they walked on through the woods until the path opened to the meadow, dotted with cows. Here, the path skirted the edge of the field. Along the fence and beyond it, they could see the gray sea, ruffled by wind. The breeze moved the high grass. And the end of the pasture. They entered the woods again, and Anne-Marie knew they would soon be there. Uncle Hendrik's house was in the clearing beyond the woods. Do you mind if I run ahead? She asked suddenly. I want to be the first to see the house. Go on, Mamma told her. Run ahead and tell the house that we've come. Then she put her arm around Ellen's shoulders and added, Say that we've brought a friend. And that is the end of chapter 6. So your question at the end for this chapter is, why didn't Mr. Johansson travel with his family? Okay, so I want you to answer that question in your reading journal.